A day after his White House meeting with President Biden to discuss the debt ceiling impasse, Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy remains optimistic that a deal can be reached to address our nation's nearly $32 trillion debt. Will the Democrats' fear-mongering make it difficult for Congress to reach an acceptable deal? Joining me now to discuss this and much more is Congressman Chris Smith. He is one of the two most senior members in the House of Representatives, having served since 1981. He's on the House Committee on Foreign Affairs. He's also the co-chair of the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission and the House Pro-Life Caucus, and he was recently reappointed as the chairman of the Congressional Executive Commission on China. He represents the 4th Congressional District of New Jersey. Congressman Smith, welcome back to the program.
Tony, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Let me first get your thoughts on Speaker McCarthy's meeting with President Biden yesterday.
Well, I think it's important that there be dialogue. I think the President of the United States was absurd when he said no negotiations. He already had one now. And I thought, the effort to attach significant budget savings has to be pursued. Tony, you'll recall, I was here in 1995 when we did Graham-Rudman. That was attached to a debt limit increase. The 2011 Budget Control Act saved some $2.1 trillion. That was attached to a debt limit increase. And frankly, in 93 and 97, budget deals were put together, and that finally got us to a balanced budget, all attached to a debt limit increase. So this is an opportunity that has to be seized, especially with the $31.5 trillion budget deficit that we're dealing with.
So Congressman, we heard the president actually sat next to Kevin Speaker McCarthy at the prayer gathering this morning. I was just a couple rows behind him. And so the president made those comments about having respect and working together, and they looked like they got along. They were talking. But then you have Senator Schumer, the leader in the Senate, over there making all of these comments about how the Republicans are going to destroy the country. They're wanting to cut Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. And we know those things are not true. And we know we have time to reach a deal. Is that going to make it harder for the two parties to come together?
There's no doubt it makes it harder. And I think the American public are sick and tired of reckless hyperbole of that kind, and Schumer certainly excels in it. I mean, the lie that we've had for decades about cutting Medicare and Social Security. I remember when Claude Pepper, now I'm going back to the 80s, when we were talking about trying to save Social Security, went to people's districts, pointed to that individual member, in absentia, of course, they weren't really there, and said, this man's the enemy of Social Security. We call it Mediscare because they do it with Medicare as well.
Right.
And I hope the people are tired of the Democrats demagoguing those issues. We're going to keep our commitment to our senior citizens, and we're going to do it robustly.
I mean, we've had the chairman of the committee on the program making very clear there will be no cuts to any of those programs. We don't need to cut those programs. It's just the wasteful spending that has been made, and the money, even from COVID, that's still out there that hasn't been spent. So
exactly,
it's all fear mongering. But I want to move on. Before we run out of time, I want to get to a topic that you and I both are passionate about. You reappointed as the chairman of the Congressional Executive Commission on China, and then this week you've introduced legislation that would tie China's trade privileges. They flooded America with cheap products, driven out American jobs, most of the time doing that with slave labor from China. You are now, for the first time since Bill Clinton, wanting to reattach their trade privileges with their human rights treatment.
Exactly. Tony, the shame of Bill Clinton is that he got it at first. He linked MFN, most favored nation status, which is critical to the export economy of China, with human rights. Then 1 year later, and I actually made a trip over to China, met with foreign ministry people who said, he's bluffing, and he was bluffing. He ripped up his human rights language, where serious and sustained progress needed to be made in order to get this huge trade benefit, which helps the Chinese economy, really doesn't help ours. So I've reintroduced that whole concept and that bill. I think the time has come. American corporations have enabled not only the military expansionism of Xi Jinping, the dictator in China, but also their security apparatus that oppresses its own people each and every day. So we need to say, China, we'll trade with you, but with conditionality. It has to be human rights, and I'm going to push very hard for it.
So in this legislation, it's not just about economic benefit that China has with flooding our markets with cheap products made from labor that's in concentration camps in some cases, but this also goes on to dealing with the organ harvesting that's been taking place of political prisoners, the economic espionage that's been taking place. And I mean, I think they have corrupted our university system. They have corrupted big business. We were told, I wasn't here, you were, but I do know, I heard the debate. We were told, oh, let's just open up the markets, give them most favored nation status, and we'll change China. I don't think that's happened. I think China has changed Wall Street, and I think it's changed our university system for the worse.
Without a doubt. I've argued, and when Clinton delinked human rights from trade, May 26, 1994, I did a press conference, and everything I said there, and I'm no prophet, has come true. They have changed. We have changed, I should say, particularly the corporate mentality in this country to pander, to do whatever they can to get cheap products and cheap labor with very too little or no protections like occupational safety. So there's a lot of people who die in China while they're making products. All of that, plus this not new, but ever worsening organ harvesting issue. I have another bill that I'm trying to get marked up, hopefully on the 28th of this coming month, about February, that will significantly go after this barbaric practice of the Chinese Communist Party to kill religious freedom advocates, to kill Falun Gong practitioners, Uyghurs, Christians, Catholics, and Tibetan Buddhists. Average age 28, 50 to 100,000 people per year, and the number is going up, to take their organs, 2 to 3 per person. It is barbaric. It is Nazi-like. Yeah. It's going on right now, as you know so well. And they target the healthiest people who happen to be religious people or Falun Gong practitioners because of their lifestyle and because they have an extreme prejudice against them.
Yeah, and we want to follow that. And that's the benefit of the Republicans having control of committees. I know where it's not going to get through the Senate and to the president most likely, but it will educate. It'll educate the American public, and it'll set the stage for later. Very quick, I got 30 seconds left. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar removed from the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Quickly, your thoughts on that?
Well, I voted for removal. My belief is that when Israel itself is facing an existential threat from Hamas, especially from Iran, Hezbollah, and for her to be making reckless statements about how the United States and Israel are the equivalent of the Taliban, that has real implications in the real world, especially in the Middle East, and especially for our great friend and ally, Israel. So I think she could be on other committees, but not on foreign affairs.
I agree 100%. I think it was should have been done a long time ago. Congressman Chris Smith, always great to see you. Thank you for your leadership on so many issues on Capitol Hill that we care very deeply
Tony,
about.
Thank you for your leadership. You've been an amazing leader, especially on religious freedom.
All right. Have a great weekend.